All right, let's look at John Dryden and his essay of dramatic poesy. John Dryden, in his essay, offers a succinct, if playful, overview of the main critical issues debated at the beginning of the neoclassical age. John Dryden actually lived and died in the 17th century. He's there at the beginning of the neoclassical age. Pope, that we'll get to in a moment, is a more central neoclassical figure. But John Dryden sort of kicks things off. And what's interesting, it's called the Essay on Dramatic Poesy, but actually, like Plato's Republic, his, quote, essay is written in dialogue form. It's actually written in a dialogue, which makes it very interesting to read. And this dialogue, it's imaginary, takes place on the eve of a great battle in 1665 and concerns four men who, as they cross the Thames in a boat, discuss the issues of the day. It's a wonderful little setting. They're crossing the boat. There's bombs all over the place. They don't know what to do with themselves. So they say, well, let's talk. Let's have a great neoclassical conversation. And the neoclassicists were great conversationalists. You'd love to sit in on their dinners. Now, these four men do disagree on lots of particulars. That's why it's a dialogue. But interestingly, even though there are disagreements, they all accept three things. One, that art is a form of imitation. Two, that art should teach and please. And three, that it should follow, either loosely or strictly, the laws of decorum. In other words, they're all neoclassicists. They all agree with Aristotle, and especially with Horace, about imitation, teaching and pleasing, and decorum. So basically, with neoclassicists, you've got a certain core belief, and then people play with the particulars. The first issue of debate in the boat concerns their relationship with the ancients. And ancients means Greeks and Latin. Sometimes it means just the Greeks. But what should their relationship be? That's a very important issue for neoclassicists. The question they ask is, should they imitate them closely? Can you surpass them? What is our relationship? Well, one man, who's very, very conservative neoclassicist, he says, we are but ill copiers of the ancients. Our merits are their merits, but our faults are our own. That's the real traditionalist that says we can only just imitate them and try to touch them, but they're much greater than we are. But because it's a dialogue, there is another man there who's a little bit more liberal, you might say, or progressive. He says that no, we have progressed and improved art because now we have both nature and the ancients to imitate, while they had only nature. So we're better because the ancients imitated nature. We can imitate nature and we can imitate the ancients at the same time. So in this sense, we're better off. We're a little bit more self-conscious than them. Believe it or not, today almost everybody would say Homer is greater than Virgil. But back in this time, people put Virgil above Homer. They put imitation above the originality of Homer. Very interesting, very neoclassical. Nevertheless, again I remind you, all of these critics, although they disagree on minor things, all agree that the ancients are to be honored and heeded. Neoclassicism is very traditional. You're supposed to respect the ancients. All right, the dialogue gets more specific as they consider the three unities. These three unities, the unities of time, place, and action, were derived from statements made by Aristotle and Horace, but actually what we call the full-fledged theory of the unities, the three unities, was actually codified by those French neoclassicists I mentioned a moment ago, Corneille, Racine, and Boileau. So these ideas come from Aristotle and Horace, but they weren't given their final shape until the French. Now, what are the three unities? All right, they have to do with the theater. The three unities of time, place, and action work this way. According to the unity of time, stage time must mimic real time as closely as possible. In any case, no more than 12 hours. In other words, a play takes about, 2 hours to unfold. Well, the real action should be about that time. The best example, I bet you've all seen the movie High Noon. That is a movie that follows the unity of time because the movie starts at 10:30 and ends at high noon, and it's about an hour and a half. And one of the reasons that movie is so tense is because every minute of movie time is a minute of real time. And that's the unity of time. That's true of Oedipus. Oedipus takes place in about half a day. It's very close to stage time. All right, what is the unity of place? According to the unity of place, action on the stage should be confined to a single space. It should not leap from city to city or locale to locale. Stick to one place. Oedipus, again, is my example. All of that play takes place in front of the palace of Oedipus. So stick to one place. Don't be jumping all over the place like you might do in a novel, let's say. One place. Finally, according to the unity of action, there should be one main plot that is not complicated or diluted by the interweaving of subplots. Don't write a play where there's lots and lots of things happening. You want one plot, and you want it to be simple and unified. Those are the three unities. Now, once our four men define the unities, they start comparing and contrasting French theater with English theater. Basically, Racine with Shakespeare. Now, they decide that whereas most French plays follow the unities, best example would be Racine's famous play, The Phèdre, which is his version of Euripides' Hippolytus. The British, on the other hand, do not. French plays are very unified and decorous. They just follow Aristotle to the letter. English plays, British plays, are more lively. And think about it. Shakespeare breaks all three of the unities. Unity of time, his plays take place over long distances. Hamlet takes place over several months. What about the unity of place? Shakespeare takes us all over the world, jumping from here to there to there to there. There's no unity of place. What about, finally, the unity of action? Think about King Lear. King Lear has the main plot, Lear and his three daughters, but it has a very prominent subplot of Gloucester and his two sons, Edmund and Edgar. Think about A Midsummer's Night's Dream. That has four plots, all working at the same time. So Shakespeare does not follow the unities in any way. Notice Shakespeare, again, he breaks the rules. He is the one who breaks decorum. Interesting. Now, Dryden, perhaps because he's an early neoclassicist, he finally decides, and by the way, one of the four men is supposed to be Dryden. It's not called Dryden, but it's clear he's embodying what Dryden believes. The Dryden persona, he concludes that British drama is finally better than the French drama, for, although it respects the ancients, it is not afraid to part from them when necessary. So again, all neoclassicists are not so strict. They want you to follow the ancients, but you can add to them or change them. If there's a moral to Dryden's essay, this is the moral. When the ancient rules of decorum are in sync with nature, they should be followed. But if they lead us to abuse nature, they must be altered or abandoned. The idea is you follow nature. And since usually the ancients follow nature, you follow them. But if they mess up, don't follow them. Don't be like those formation flyers. One goes in the pit and they all follow him in there. So again, basically what I'm trying to say and what Dryden is trying to say is that neoclassical art is not just a pale copy of the ancients. It's not just a simple imitation. What it is a traditional approach that requires laws and models, but is not enslaved by them. Again, sometimes we have this idea that neoclassicists just imitates the ancients and that's it. No, they are very original, but they believe in laws and models and decorum. A good way to say this is that for the neoclassicists, decorum is not a straitjacket. Now, to us moderns who are post-romantics, it seems like a straitjacket. Most young poets say, I don't want to be stuck to the tradition. Don't tell me I've got to do this and I've got to do this. I want to do my own thing. Not for a neoclassicist. Decorum's important, but again, it's not a straitjacket. It doesn't force you. What it is a guide and a touchstone that keeps you on track. So again, this is a higher view of neoclassicism, not the simplistic view that we sometimes have of just imitating blindly everything that happened before.